last Sunday, Denise and Gary are out of town. They were gifted a trip somewhere by a family member at Christmas, and I can't remember for sure where it is, but they're gone. But Denise shared such a wonderful message about generosity, and I so appreciated the things and the ideas. And one particular thing that she shared, I wanted to step into for a minute as we move into today's message. The title of today's message is All My Life You Have Been Faithful, and that's a big reason why the songs that we sang were chosen, that Russell was bringing us and the rest of the team into that space and into our thoughts. And the same thing with our prayer moment. He has been so faithful in spite of. So here's this introductory idea, apart from where we're at in Acts. We're back in the book of Acts in the series One Stone at a Time. But sticking with some of what Denise shared last week, if you go back into the Christmas story for just a moment, in Matthew chapter 2, and you don't have to literally go back there, but just think with me for a minute. Denise brought this into our dialogue last Sunday. The Magi from the where? Magi from the where? East. East is from a Greek word, and it's pronounced Anatole. Anatole. And the translation in Greek literally means the quarter whence the sun rises, or the east. And then Anatole is in turn the root for a geographical word, Anatolia, and it means one of the great crossroads of the ancient civilizations. This is taken from some research I did this week. A broad peninsula that lies between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, called Asia Minor by the Romans. The land is the Asian part of modern Turkey. I'm just giving you some information here, and you'll see when I kind of try to shift this back to where we are today, so don't lose me yet. There are different ethnic groups that come from the east, that come from Anatolia. And some of these you're familiar with: Turks, Kurds, Armenians, Chechens, and I'm not positive on this, I didn't look it up, but I think Circassians and Greeks are from this area, Anatolia, from the east. And so there are many faiths that are represented in those ethnic groups. Cultures, again, I'm reading from some of the research I did. Cultures from this area are today closely associated with Islam, but its history is tied to many faiths. The original nomads who migrated to Anatolia practiced a religion called Tengriism, if I said that right. An ethnic and old state Turco-Mongolic region based on folk shamanism, animism, and generally centered around the sky god of Tengri. Tengri was not considered a deity in the usual sense, but a personification of the universe. And this is kind of the purpose, according to Tengriism. The purpose of life, according to the Tengris' view, to live in harmony with the universe, no personal God. So let's summarize kind of this. We started Matthew 2. Magi again coming from the east, or Anatolia. And they come together, and Denise told us last week that we traditionally think of three kings, but she shared with us, and I trust her research, that it could have been many more than that who came as kind of a caravan. But they came with this one thought, these people who perhaps then were involved in some capacity with Tengriism or some other faith that comes from that space. But they came together and said, we want to worship him. In verse 8 of chapter 2 of Matthew, it tells us that they meet this fellow by the name of Herod. You remember this? And he says, me too. I want to go and worship. So tell me where he is when you find him. Tell me where he is, because I want to go and worship him too. And then in verse 11, we're told that the Magi continue to follow the star until they find the baby Jesus, right? And then it says they did what they said they wanted to do. They fell down and they worshiped him. So let's talk about worship for just a second. Worship in all of these instances, whether it's Herod saying he wants to do it, but he doesn't really, or the Magi saying they want to, and then finally verse 11 where they actually do, the word that is there in the Greek is a word you've heard me talk about many times before. In the Greek, it's proskuneo. Proskuneo. Combination of two words. It means pros is forward or extended, and kuneo means to kiss. So if we put these together, and this is from a New Testament translation of these words that we have, properly then, to kiss the ground before a superior, to adore on one's knees, to show complete submission. Metaphorically, in the New Testament then, sometimes this is described as the kissing ground. This space, the kissing ground between the worshiper and the one that we are worshiping. The kissing ground between people who say that they are believers, the bride and the heavenly bridegroom. Proskuneo. So let's play just for a second. Kind of compare and contrast, okay? So who is seen? We've already discussed this a bit, so it's not a question out of left field. But who is seen or was seen as the leader of the Jewish people in their state, so to speak, during the time before Christ's birth? Herod. So Herod, and he's a Jew, and he's representing the Jews. But we know from what we've read that he has no inclination to worship Jesus because Jesus will get in the way of his reign. So I know this isn't scriptural, but the phrase that comes to mind is phony baloney. I don't know the Greek for that at all. But he said he wanted to worship the Christ, but did he? No. How interesting it is to me, and this is the thought that occurred to me while Denise was sharing last week, and she touched on it quite a bit, but her theme was generosity, and so she moved away from it. But how interesting it was to me that in the absence of Jewish leadership coming to worship their coming king, acknowledging the birth of their Christ, their Messiah that they've waited a few years for, none of them show up. But people from other lands, other cultures, other faiths come and fall on their face, kiss the ground, and worship this king. Other cultures, other lands, other faiths. And what that kept saying to me, and this is kind of the introductory idea that I know it took me quite a bit to get to this morning. But I would say this, and it ties into the message title and the things that we've been singing about. But it's this: there is never a point in time when God is confused or worried about his plan to deliver what is next. God does not wring his hands even at the birth of his son, because the religious people that he has chosen, that they don't get it and that their leaders don't get it. He doesn't stop and go, oh no, what am I going to do? In fact, he's so, and I hope this communicates, he is so much God that if they don't show up, he'll bring people from other faiths and other countries, and they will acknowledge. So He is never confused or worried about his plan to deliver what is next in his plan for humanity. And that's basically what I just said. But I'd also put this under there. He is never at a loss, confused, worried about what to do in delivering his plan to you and to me and making sure it happened. Making sure that what he wants to see take place, he will work it. He will not be late, and he will not miss it. That's good news for someone today. For someone who is feeling like, man, there's stuff going on. And granted, he took care of things with Jesus coming and Emmanuel, and we went all through that. But somebody maybe today is just thinking, but my plan must be too small or too unimportant. And I'm just out here by myself. But I would say to you, as A. Marie prayed today, no. He has not forgotten you. He is still working in and through your situation, whatever it is. And if you can trust and let go of some of your tendency, because if you're like me, you have this tendency to try to carry it yourself and instead go, I can't. He'll gladly take that. And he'll begin to show you ways that he is at work in your situation. So does this concept work outside the Christmas story? When God's chosen people don't do what he has hoped for them to do. So now we're going to slow turn, get all the way back to Acts chapter 18. My answer would be yes. He doesn't just show up on Christmas and Easter. He's pretty involved the entire time. So if you are now in the book of Acts, go to Acts chapter 18. We're going to pick up in this series one stone at a time. And I'm just going to read to you where we start. We're in verse 12. A couple principles here, and then we'll come back and we have a special, again, benediction song. We were doing that before Christmas, where we would sit on one song at the end of the service and really grab onto that for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, and we're going to do that. And I love the song that Russell's chosen for us this time, and we're going to get back to that. But first, Acts chapter 18, verse 12 says this: well, Gallio was proconsul, which is equivalent to governor or the highest ranking Roman official in that area of Achaia. The Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to the place of judgment. Notice the cultural references here. When Gallio was proconsul, so he is from what nation? Rome or Italy, okay. Governor, the Jews, so it wasn't from anything within the Roman leadership or the Roman authorities. The Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to the place of judgment. So here's the first principle I want to give you, and somebody, again, this is going to ring out really strong for you. And I'm going to say this to you: I'm much better at giving questions than answers, but God majors on the reverse rather than what I just said. You'll figure that out later, maybe. But here's the principle. Supporters and detractors in your life journey may not be the people you expect. There are folks that you will today believe, man, or in your past you have thought, man, this is somebody who supports me. But lately you've been discovering, and supports you, I don't mean they just tell you yes all the time, but somebody who in general is, you can count on them. They have your welfare on their mind and on their heart. But lately you've been discovering maybe that's not the case. And the flip of that, I think, is also true. There are people that you have no idea right now are supporters for you. They care about you. They pray for you. There are people sitting here that have prayer supporters over here. And the same thing all around the room. And there are people that you haven't really talked to yet. That's why I keep focused on this idea of doing things together, because it's in the together. I heard this a long time ago. The opposite of addiction is connection. And so it's in our isolation that addictions, and I'm not just talking about drugs, I'm talking about a lot of things, but it's in our isolation that addictions thrive. It's in our connection that we're freed from those things. And you will not know who will, in connection, support you until you connect with them. And so there are people right now who are your support people. And you haven't met them yet. And so I want to encourage you to do so. So a couple thoughts on this idea. When people you counted on do not come through, it is hurtful. It is sad. It is unfair. But it's going to happen. And everyone said, that was weak. Because you know that was true, right? There are people that you counted on to come through, but they don't. And it's hurtful and it's sad and it's unfair, but it's going to happen. And everyone said, that was a little better. It is. It is. So once more, I say this. Supporters and detractors in your journey may not be the people that you expect. And I want to say to you, in conjunction then with the message title today, so what? Be faithful anyway. Because he will be. Oh, I just can't do it anymore because so-and-so let me down. Anybody ever heard that? Or anybody ever felt that? But the whole emphasis of where we've been from the very beginning song to this point right now is that the faithfulness of God is what we count on. That's our bedrock. That's our foundation. I saw this the other day, and there was no author attributed to it, but the phrase was this, and I believe this is in your outline: you can't build with someone who isn't trying to help you carry the bricks. And it's not a literal thing. I mean, it might be true. Some people right now in your job situation, this is a truth. You've been waiting for someone to help you build something, but they never want to carry bricks. So you carry all of them, and they carry none of them. And it's frustrating you. The truth is you just got to let go of that and stop counting on them. Once we know who those folks are, and it could be outside, it could be at school, it could be a school situation, it could be a friend situation, and it's not a literal, obviously, carrying bricks, but it's again, it goes back to this, it's somebody who is a supporter, or you wanted to have them be a supporter in your life. So what we have to come to the place of understanding is we are not accountable for what they do or don't do. And this is part of the challenge for us. We are not accountable for what they do or don't do. We are accountable to ourselves and to the one who called us. I heard this a long time ago, William McCumber. And I know that that's a name that probably 2 people in here know. But he said, success is just keeping fidelity to whatever Jesus has asked us to do. It's not in the scorecard. So the Jews of Corinth, who, those are Paul's family. Those are his ethnic group, his culture, his everything else. And if we go back to verse 12, it says, instead of them supporting and helping him, and this isn't a new thing for him, but they made a united attack on him. They couldn't agree on anything except for to not like Paul. and to give him a bad time. And here's what they have to say, verse 13. This man, they charged, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. Just as Paul was about to speak, put a circle around that or a box or something. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. Let me back up one more time and read this. This man, they charge, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. And just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to them, if you Jews were making a complaint about some misdemeanor or serious crime, it would be reasonable for me to listen to you. But since it involves questions about words and names and your own law, settle the matter yourselves. I will not be a judge of such things. And so he drove them off. And then the crowd turned on Sosthenes, the synagogue leader, and beat him in front of the proconsul. And Gallio showed no concern whatever. How about that? The person I feel worse for in this whole story is Sosthenes, right? So this next point or principle in your outline is one that we've all heard 100 times or more. Haters gonna hate. Right? Haters gonna hate. And if it ain't focused on you, it's focused on someone else. Now, just being a bit vulnerable here for a second, this message has a special significance to me and maybe some other folks here because I have spent days, weeks, months, years even trying to understand this. People who are geared in that direction, they're going to hate. And I have tried to fix situations, even if it's not leveled at me. Fix situations, fix families, fix individuals, and I need to stop. So do you. With Christ's help, I am trying to not do that anymore. That doesn't mean I'm not concerned. That doesn't mean I don't pray. But I'm trying to not fix stuff. And part of it, as I was unpacking this myself, this portion of Scripture, and I asked myself, why did I get into that stuff to begin with? Why did I get in the middle of that situation that was really someone else's situation? Or why did I try to help this person to see? Why did I try so hard until I lost all my peace? And here's some of the reasons that came to my mind, and yours might be different. Number one, because I thought that it was about me. I looked at that situation, I looked at that person, and I thought that their hate, or you can de-escalate it from hate and just say their obnoxiousness, or some other word that you come up with, that it really was about me. And so therefore I needed to help them see that I should not be a person who receives that kind of venting. Or secondly, I thought I could help them see something. If it wasn't about me, I thought maybe if I invest into this trait that is so evident in their lives, this focused frustration, discontent, that's a good word, right? That if I could intervene and help them to see, how godly of an investment that would be for me. And I was reminded as I was writing that down, Oswald Chambers, he has this phrase, and I picked it up probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I use it quite a bit now, but he just said, we need to refrain from being an amateur providence in people's lives. Again, that doesn't mean I don't care. That doesn't mean I don't pray. That doesn't mean I'm not available. But unless they have come to me, this is what I've discovered at 61 and a half. Unless they've come to me seeking direction, lamenting their situation, and wanting some help and guidance, my words are fruitless. I came to this idea while we were gone. 3 days, we went off to Port Townsend for a few days after Christmas and had some downtime, and it was wonderful. And we were working on a puzzle, and as I was doing that, we were spending all this time, because we're out of puzzle shape. That's such a thing. We weren't good at it. So we spent a big lot of time trying to get the outline part, or what do you call that? The borders. There you see. I didn't even know what to call it. But we had a 1,000-piece puzzle. We started into it, and I didn't have my glasses on either, so that was a problem. And so I found that as we were trying to do the border and stuff, that I had put some pieces that didn't quite fit unless I helped them. There. Right? Because I want them to fit. Because I want the border to look pretty. I want it to be done so we can fill the picture. And those puzzle pieces, they kept, the ones that weren't in the right place, they kept jumping out. You know, and some of them I had to turn them over and look, and I could see that little tiny space that wasn't quite meeting, and I knew they didn't even belong there. We are a jigsaw puzzle people. And we're surrounded by jigsaw puzzle people. And sometimes, and you know, this is the thing, there was this one part, I don't want to spend too much time here, but there was this one part where I had 3 sections, and it wasn't going together, and I knew it made the foundational part of the image, but I had it broken into three sections, and I'm like, there are no more border pieces. This has to fit, and I kept going back and forth until I flipped it over, and I discovered, like I said, there was one that was in the wrong space. When they were in the right space, it fit together really easy. Like it was supposed to be that way. But I wanted it to fit the way I wanted it. So here's another quote that I have for you. Again, no contributing source. I looked this up, but it was one of these things that showed up on Facebook, actually, and I liked it. So it fits in this, I think. And so here's this quote. There are some people who always seem angry, continuously looking for conflict. The battle that they are fighting isn't with you, it is with themselves. I'm sure I can get that to fit. I'm sure I can make them understand. So our final resolve kind of this point, and I'd go ahead and ask for our worship team to come to the platform here. We're going to close in just a couple minutes. I'll just read that quote to you one more time because I think it really leads into this last one. It says, there are some people who always seem angry, continuously looking for conflict. The battle that they are fighting isn't with you, it is with themselves. So the last point is this: haters going to hate, but all my life he's been faithful. Go back up to that verse 14 for a second. And this is why I had you circle this. Starts with this phrase before the comma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. Just as Paul was about to speak, stop. So Paul was ready to contribute Paul into this equation, right? Just like you are, and just like I am, about ready to contribute what we have and what we know and what we understand into this situation. These people have levied this charge against him. So just as Paul was about to say Paul stuff, a non-believer interrupts. Right? And takes care of the whole situation for him. And I got to read the rest of that one more time, but it's so significant to me There was Paul. There was Ev. There was you. Ready to fix, in accordance with your plan, this situation. Ready to set them straight. Ready to plead. However you want to finish that, ready to do whatever is in you to try to remedy this situation. And God takes a non-believer. and I don't know if Paul even got out, but it just says he was about to speak, but Gallio interrupts him. And God takes care of the situation, at least Paul's situation, for him through people who don't even believe in him. And what we find out, if you go past where we were today, if you go into the next, it's actually next Sunday's message, but it just says that Paul stayed there some time. Stayed there in Corinth some time. If everything that was going to happen there, at least what we're led into, was going to fall on top of Paul, he can't stay there. But instead, like I said, Gallio interrupts. God uses someone from outside the faith to keep Paul where he needs to be. If you back up to verse 11, which just before, it says he was there for 1.5 years. That's the longest time he stays anywhere in his second missionary journey. He's there for, like I said, 1.5 years. And the people were all ready to get rid of him. But God said no. That, my friends, is what faithfulness does in our God. He steps into those situations where there's no way in and of ourselves we're going to fix them. And he takes care of them. Let's stand together. A couple weeks ago, Sasha, Roslyn, and Luke were baptized, and many of you were here. But each of their stories, and I loved them. If you didn't catch those, go back and listen to them. It's worth your time. But in each of their stories, they shared how they came to different situations. And I'm not going to go back and relive all those, where there was a point of struggle. A point of decision making for them had to happen, and there was some action steps for them, but it was an action step in accordance to the faithfulness of the God that was calling to them. In our discouragement, in our selfishness, we are sometimes tempted to flee situations, but when we stand and we remain faithful in who he has called us to be, keeping fidelity to the call that he has placed on our lives, we will have the opportunity to see the faithfulness of God surround us and remedy things that we never would have imagined would play out that way. If you've seen that happen in your life before, would you say amen? And that's not just past. That is now, and that is looking forward. Again, join in with Russell and the team as they lead us, and let these thoughts kind of ruminate. If you want to come forward and pray about a particular thing, the altar's open. Otherwise, we'll just close in prayer in just a couple minutes.